Hey business warriors, today we are going to be talking about business structures and the difference between two of the most common business structures in the United States, the sole proprietorship and the limited liability company. So first we'll talk about the advantages of a sole proprietorship. So sole proprietorship is the easiest business structure to set up in this country. Basically, you don't really even need to do anything to set it up. It just sort of boing. Just sort of springs out of thin air. Literally, you just start doing business, start selling stuff or start providing some sort of service. People give you money and basically you're working for yourself. And the only time you come to actually filling out some paperwork about it is when you file taxes. Your profits from your business go on their Schedule C on your personal tax return, okay? And sometimes you might even not realize how this is done because with the tax software that they have these days, oftentimes you just have to fill out a form and say, oh, did you have any self-employment, sole proprietorship income? And you just fill that out and then the tax software automatically does it for you anyway. So it's really not a very big headache. So basically, it's very, very simple to set up. There's no filing fees, no annual fees, nothing like that, administration costs, etc. And you know, this would be good for people who are working part-time perhaps, or perhaps just starting out doing this, because there's no risk involved. You're not making much of a commitment. And if, you know, for some reason 1 month you don't do any work or there's just no work to be done, you just don't have to make any money that month. You make zero from your self-employed, you know, your sole proprietorship. And that's fine. But now for the big disadvantage of sole proprietorships, they don't protect you from liability. So let's give an example. Let's say that your sole proprietorship bakes cakes, right? And you sell them at a farmer's market or at a school fair, or you sell them somewhere, right? Some sort of reasonably informal setting, but you're selling cakes and someone eats one of your cakes and gets sick, all right? And they decide to sue you. Because you haven't set up a company, they end up suing you personally. So all your assets, your house, your car, potentially are at risk in a case where you may have to provide compensation to that person who got sick eating your cake. And if they got seriously sick, then it could be a lot of compensation. You may have to use your house or something. You have to sell your house or refinance or on your house, you know, your mortgage, whatever, to pay that compensation. So that takes us to the advantages now of an LLC or a limited liability company. It basically does what it says on the tin. It limits your liability. So if you'd set up a company that bakes cakes, okay, and that person, you know, same situation, that person gets sick eating one of your cakes, they now have to sue your LLC. They sue your company, not you personally. So it's the company's assets that are held liable, not your personal assets such as your house, your car, or whatever. So this is what LLC does. It limits your liability and it also separates your business and personal assets. So in the case of, you know, the LLC owing money on any kinds of debts or whatever, normally it won't be your personal assets that are attacked or seized or whatever or are liable to pay off those debts. It's the company's assets. So it's a separation. Now, LLC is an interesting case because it's kind of like a container and you can choose what's in that container. So an LLC can either be taxed as a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation, okay? So a single member LLC basically will be taxed as a sole proprietorship. It's the same kind of thing. What you need to know though is that in some states, some areas, single member LLCs don't actually get the same protection because some courts have ruled that they are still just sole proprietorships and so they don't protect your personal assets. In some states that has been the case, in some not so. So it's, you know, you might have to look at what goes on in your state. The law has been unclear on this point. But certainly with partnerships like multiple member LLCs or LLCs that are being taxed as corporations, you definitely have that, you know, no liability whatsoever. The company is held liable for things. Now, if you opt to be taxed as a partnership, the income from your LLC will go through onto your personal tax return like it will with a sole proprietorship. So you actually still get the same tax benefits even though you've set up a company. You're not going to get doubled taxed. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, okay? You protect yourself from being sued for various things, but for tax purposes, that tax still goes through onto your personal tax return and gets taxed at personal rates. You don't have to do double taxation, i.e. the company pays corporate tax and then gives you a dividend and you have to pay tax on that dividend. That doesn't exist. LLCs can also opt to be taxed as S-corps, and that's also another type of pass-through pass-through entity where there are significant tax advantages once you start to get a bit bigger and pay yourself a salary and a dividend. We'll discuss that in another video, going from LLC partnership to LLC S-corp. This video is really just comparing the two statuses of sole proprietor and LLC. Now let's talk about some disadvantages of LLCs. So really the first big disadvantage that springs to mind, and this is going to be more so for people who are kind of just starting out in business, is going to be the setup costs for an LLC. The cost varies across the country. Here in New Jersey, where I am, it's actually pretty cheap. I think we paid about $300 or so to set up our LLC, Generations Media LLC. But in New York, it costs quite a lot more, and apparently the average is around $1,000. New York State has some weird rules as well, like when you set up an LLC, you have to publicize it in the newspaper. You have to take out like a little ad kind of thing in the newspaper and run that for like 6 weeks, like a formation notice. I don't know, it probably comes from like some law that was introduced like 100 years ago and is ridiculously out of date, but they just haven't changed because they have to go through the state senate or something to change it, and they can't be bothered. Anyway, so basically you're stuck with that kind of stupid situation. But anyway, in most cases, yeah, it could be up to $1,000, so it's definitely in a few hundred, and you have to file and you get the certificate of formation, and you get given an EIN, employer identification number, which is like the identification number of your business entity, whereas, you know, if you have a sole proprietorship, you just use your personal social security number. And then another disadvantage is that if you are a single member LLC, some states just don't allow that, and then in some other states, courts may actually see you as a sole proprietor and not extend the benefits of an LLC to you if you got into trouble. So LLCs, to be certain that you're getting that protection, it is better to have multiple members. Now in conclusion, let's just look at which business structure would be right for who. So in my opinion, I would say that sole proprietor is definitely the best business structure for people just starting out in business. Maybe they start part-time and they have the view to going full-time at a later date and getting more serious about it, but they want to try it out. Some people who are sort of freelancers doing things which don't carry any risk, like perhaps just writing articles, designing websites, things like that, they would probably be fine just continuing as a sole proprietor, especially if they don't want to hire any employees. Because as a sole proprietor, if you want to hire employees, you then have to go and apply for an EIN, like an LLC has, and at that point you might as well just apply for an LLC anyway, especially if you're having people working for you. If there's any disagreement with those people and they decide to sue you over wages or something like that, then you want them suing a company rather than you personally. So for people who are just freelancers, continuing working like that, freelance journalist, web designer, etc., those kind of industries, especially where there's no risk, then it could be good long term. If you're someone with a trade or something, like an electrician or a plumber, it's probably not the best sort of structure to keep working long term. If you're setting yourself up as an electrician and advertising and getting clients, you definitely want the protection of a limited liability company so that if there's anything wrong with your wiring, they're not going to come and sue you personally when your house blows up, right? When their house blows up. So those sort of things that have a little bit of risk around them, it's much better to set up a company. And definitely as your business starts getting bigger, and certainly if you have more than one person involved in the business at the sort of director level of the company, like membership, member level, an equal partner in the business, then you definitely want to set up an LLC. So in my business, we have an LLC, Generations Media LLC. When we first started out, we were sole proprietors, and we just sort of would split the profit of our YouTube earnings and stuff, very informal. But later on, once we have like 4 YouTube channels running now, and once we started making decent amounts of money, we then set up an LLC. Google now pays our LLC, and we have like a 50% split, a 50% ownership of the company, and we have a business bank account and everything like that, and our LLC then pays us. And in our industry, there's not much risk of us being sued, unless it was for something like a copyright or something like that. Like some of our other videos use clips from movies and stuff. But if we were to get sued for copyright infringement or something like that, it would be our company that gets sued rather than us personally. So we get offered that protection. And the next stage for us will be switching from a LLC partnership to an LLC S-corp, which we will probably do at the beginning of 2019, and it's going to offer significant tax advantages, and I'm going to talk about that in another video, so look out for that in the near future. Thanks guys for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like, please subscribe if you are new, and we will see you next time on the Business Shifu Show. Bye bye.